Thomas Frederick Woodley and Alphonse D. Miller tried to counterattack the forbidding picture drawn by such authors as James Ford Rhodes, who, while conceding Stevens' leadership abilities, considered him a violent partisan; William A. Dunning, who thought him truculent, vindictive, and cynical; and Claude G. Bowers, who called him as much a revolutionist as Marat in his tub. George Fort Milton named him Caliban, while J. G. Randall characterized him as the perfect type of vindictive ugliness. Even the best of the biographies, Richard N. Current's Old Thad Stevens, A Story of Ambition, was not favorable to its subject, and only in the period after the Second World War did writers like Ralph Korngold, Elsie Singmaster, and Fawn M. Brodie seek once again to portray the great commoner in a favorable light. But they tended to overestimate his influence. Writing at a time when congressional Reconstruction was still termed radical, they naturally placed him at the center of the Reconstruction process. More than 30 years have passed since the appearance of the last biography of the great Pennsylvanian. Since that time, historians have shown that Reconstruction constituted a compromise of principle, hardly as radical as its reputation. No Confederate leaders were executed, the 14th Amendment was a moderate compromise, and the impeachment effort ended in acquittal. Stevens was disappointed in all these developments, though he never advocated executions, and he certainly would have been equally chagrined at the inconclusive wording of the 15th Amendment. A few weeks before his death, he himself thought his whole life had been a failure, except for his contribution to free public education in Pennsylvania. Yet he laid the foundation for the African American Revolution of the 20th century, which not only rested on his heritage, but made good use of the 14th Amendment. Thus it is time for a modern, up-to-date biography. Chapter 1. New England Youth. In the northeastern corner of Vermont, about 10 miles east of St. Johnsbury, lies the small village of Danville. Named after the French geographer Jean-Baptiste Danville, in 1789 it boasted of 200 families. It was located in the middle of pleasant farming country, in an elevated region, with a broken range known as Cow Hill and Walden Mountain to the west, and beautifully diversified hills and valleys to the east. By 1795, it had become the county seat of Caledonia County and prided itself on a courthouse, a jail, and grist and sawmills. Its Yankee inhabitants were mostly farmers, hard-working, religious, and devoted to their Methodist, Baptist, and Congregational churches. It was to this village that Joshua Stevens and his wife Sarah Morrill had come a few years earlier from Methuen, Massachusetts. A shoemaker and surveyor, Stevens had made a new survey of the township, which was considered authoritative. He had the reputation of being an excellent wrestler, able to throw any man in the county. He and his wife had 4 children: Joshua, born in 1790, Thaddeus on April 4, 1792, Abner Morrill in 1794, and Allenson in 1797. Joshua later moved to Indianapolis, became a judge, and raised a family. Abner stayed in Vermont, married, had 3 children, and practiced medicine in St. Johnsbury. Allenson, remaining unmarried, farmed at home. It was Thaddeus, the second son, who was to become famous. Born with a club foot, he was marked for life with a handicap of which he was deeply conscious. His name honored the Polish patriot, Thaddeus Kosciuszko. Controversy surrounded Thaddeus Stevens all his life. Even the date of his birth was to become controversial, because some detractors, in an attempt to prove that he was the illegitimate son of Count Charles-Maurice de Talleyrand-Périgord, claimed that he was born in 1793 rather than in 1792. Talleyrand was also lame and visited the United States in the 1790s. The falsity of the assertion is easily proven, however, as the Danville town records specify 1792 as the year of Stevens' birth, and the Frenchman came to America only in 1794, but the story persisted. Stevens's real father, Joshua, was reputed to have been a man of rather dissipated habits. His son Thad hardly ever spoke of him, and when Edward McPherson, later the clerk of the House of Representatives, asked, "Stevens, what sort of man was your father?" the reply was enigmatic. "I knew very little about him in respect to the quality of his mind," the son said.